So with the mining projects that are maybe currently going on around the US, I know, Brent, you had mentioned that you gotten a few calls recently on things that you never heard of in the last 20 years. What's kind of the direction of things right now in terms of like what's actionable and actually happening? And then also any kind of sniffs of things from the administration as far as what their approach is going to be on this?
Well, um, so the things that have been moving the quickest are things, again, where you're out of the federal domain, the public lands domain. So I'm sure, whatever phone calls you might be getting would be people who are looking at occurrences, and access to resources that are in private lands that can be negotiated.
They are. They
And
are.
that those projects have been moving, but they're moving unevenly because of lack of other things. So like, we're so accustomed in oil and gas leasing and in the standard petroleum land agreements and all of that. The disposition of those minerals in terms of rights and everything else, that's very well understood. When it comes to brines and brine-based minerals and other things like pore space for carbon dioxide sequestration or anything else,
Yeah.
it's a
The rules of the game aren't published.
pretty murky
You
world.
know?
We had in our energy summit at the Baker Institute last October on a panel I chaired, related to minerals and materials. We had a representative from SLB. SLB has a direct lithium extraction uh, subsidiary that they are running, and the request in terms of a wish list, a request was clarity on lithium. If you're going to go into the business of extracting lithium, it'd be nice to know who owns it and what royalty is going to be charged.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. The rules of
So,
the it's very much with the whole pore space and constituent mineral space. The
yeah,
rules of the game really aren't written.
right.
And so, that needs to be cleared up. It needs to be, we're very much in the land grab phase of things and
Yeah.
people are grabbing what they think.
But you can't move
Um,
forward with projects without some clarity on that other stuff. So that's the private lands bucket. So when you look at minerals projects today, mining projects, I mean, you can put, if you want, brine-based extraction in the minerals, hopper. That part clearly needs, work.
can I ask one more question kind of on that, Brian? Because I think we're probably closest there to getting some clarity, right? In the
Yeah.
in the states that at least we're active in now. Um, what other minerals could be extracted from brine? We
Yeah.
talk about
No,
open
but
pit
you look at
mining and
like
things, big thing, but
South Arkansas, where Exxon took its position in the Magnolia area.
Mhm.
That those were the South Arkansas has hosted a bromine extraction industry for a very
For
long time.
years,
Over in
years.
California, we've got the one producer of boron, which actually people should worry more about than they do. So there is you can extract a lot, but remember, I mean, to use the gold in the ocean analogy, the concentrations have to be high enough. A lot of the DLE developers, including SLB, but also, some of their competitors, people with alternative processes and so on, tell us that they think they can be commercial at low concentrations, but you know, they have to test it out and see.
Yeah.
And so this is something that we've seen historically with brine resources. You really need robust concentrations to be comfortable. So robust meaning, 800 parts per million, 1200 parts per
Yeah.
million. If you
For
look at,
for years.
where we are in our brines, 1600 parts per million would be, like pretty good. I think, look at Chile and the Atacama and it's 6,000 parts per
Yeah.
million,
Yeah.
so that's the reality, but you're here. So one of the tricks in all of this for the US mineral side is, do you benefit because you're US based, so you're closer to the customer? Your cost might improve because supply chain logistics are more in your favor than projects that are overseas. That's
Mhm.
a trade-off that people are struggling with, to do work. Does it make
But if we're not processing here, does that even matter?
Well, that's the thing. So you have to have,
Yeah.
processors have to come into the picture and be willing to put,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
put out the form of lithium that the customers need, and so that's a separate conversation, and
Yeah.
so, and then the same thing is true. You go over to the federal land side, the public land side. If you can get past that hurdle, we've got metals projects that have been trying to get off the ground for a long, long, long time and haven't really made much progress. So,
Yeah, it's hard to
that
do it in 4 and
again,
8-year windows.
yeah. There are
It's
some things,
difficult.
like, up in Utah at the venerable Bingham Canyon's largest copper mine, one of the largest copper mines anywhere. They have expanded refining capacity to be able to process waste. I mean, this is something that Freeport-McMoRan is looking at doing for their Arizona operations. Everybody's looking at that kind of stuff. And, looking at what it would take to invest in additional circuits to capture additional metals out of those, you know, uh, concentrate streams. And a lot of, I would say startups, either, if they're, pure new greenfield projects or brownfield projects, everyone is looking at, what can I add in processing so that I'm not capturing, just copper, just cobalt, but also tellurium, indium, and other things of interest that are important for manufacturing a lot of the stuff that we're talking about trying to manufacture anyway.
Yeah. Well, it
Yeah.
sounds like we're once again putting the cart before the horse. We haven't addressed the manufacturing thing as
I
a
get this
society,
question all
but
the
we're
time. What has to happen in federal policy, to make all of this work? And it's actually go over to the Environmental Protection Agency, because a lot of what
yeah,
affected smelting and processing historically has been clean air, clean water, toxic substances, hazardous materials, Superfund. Those have been
Yeah.
the worst, and, the most difficult things on businesses that you know uh, were having a tough time in terms of commercial, sustaining themselves commercially anyway. So you can look at the lead smelter rules in the Clean Air Act, and pretty much link that
all
directly
but
to. Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, it's how do we do this stuff? Where are we willing to do it? Can we
what are we
do it,
willing to
and meet the
sacrifice as
public
a
interest
society?
expectations? Um,
Yeah.
and then if not, you really have to rethink, what it is that you're doing. And I think it's been too easy for people to kick the can to other countries and say, well, if we're not going to process it and smelt it here, the Indians will. Well, goodness, you
Yeah.
know,
Until they won't.
until they will. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, we've done a really good job of exporting industries that we viewed to be hazardous, but that because of our labor costs or other things really just weren't working here anymore, and sending them off to places that actually didn't have all the layers of protection that we do.
Yeah. Well, Michelle,
It just makes me curious. Sorry, kind of maybe last thing here as we wrap up, but I'm just with the new administration and tariffs, how does all of this apply with the tariffs if like we really need these materials, but we're, potentially taxing people on them? And I mean, it's just a whole
That's
mind
the
game.
big $4 gazillion question, right? I mean, I don't
Yeah,
know.
seriously.
No, I don't. There hasn't been enough clarity around tariffs. My view on that, by the way, is that it's really a negotiating thing. It's carrot stick.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
it's a
I think
exactly.
it's
it's
the stick part
I
of
think
the
the
negotiation.
news this week on Colombia related to immigration issues and on all of that, I think is a good example of it. I think how we're dealing with Russia
Right.
and China are going to end up the same way. But the situation with China is serious in many respects that we don't have time to get into. So it requires some careful thought about how we do things and what kind of signals we're sending and all of that. I don't like tariffs on things. I think, what we really need to do is look internally, and we're not the only ones. The Germans are going to have to do this too. Why are we not competitive in these businesses? Do we want to be do we want to be competitive in some of these businesses? And if so, what will it take? And if we're not willing to take those steps, then what do we do as an alternative? I think that's the conversation that we have to have. That's just my own opinion.